Welcome back, fourth graders. My name is Mrs. Lawson, and we are going to keep reading the story Quake. I hope you enjoyed it yesterday when we started it. Let's go ahead and get these slides up. And we are on lesson 8 today, and we are going to be focusing on identifying figurative language in the text so that we can have a better understanding of what we are reading. We know we are successful today when we can define figurative language, identify figurative language in the text, and determine the meaning of figurative language. So what is figurative language? We keep talking about it. Well, today we are specifically focusing on similes and metaphors. So a simile is comparing two unlike things using the words like or as. So down here, her eyes shine like diamonds. So it's comparing somebody's eyes to diamonds. Or we could be using a metaphor. So that is comparing two things by making a comparison without using like or as. So Jordan was a tornado of emotions. So it's comparing Jordan to a tornado. So our foundational skill practice today is still those suffixes that we've been using. So let's start with geologists. So geologists might spend time studying earthquakes. So write that word geologist down on a piece of paper or on your whiteboard. Why do you think a geologist would study an earthquake? Well, let's kind of dissect that word and figure out what it means. We know that we know that the suffix that we're looking at right now is ist. So if we take that suffix away, we can find the base word. So I don't know a word that's geology, but I do know a base word that is geology. Have you guys ever heard of the word geology? Yeah. So let's look at that. Geology is actually the study of the earth. So if this is somebody who studies the earth, it would make sense that they study earthquakes. So that's why it's important for us to understand these suffixes to help us figure out the meaning of words we don't know. So let's identify the base word in the following words. Got this word right here. So write it down and figure out what is the base. Well, in order to figure out the base word, we have to find the suffix. And I know the suffix we've been working with is ism. So that means our base has got to be journal. So it's something to do with journal. What about this word? Which suffixes have we been working with? Let's start there. I know one of the suffixes we've been working with is ism. You guys remember any of the other ones? Ist. What's that last one we've been working with? IAN, good job. So now that helps us when we get to these other parts. So we know we can take off that base and we can see, oh, the base here is diet. So it's somebody who's focused on your diet. What about the next one? Well, I know if I don't know the whole word, I can at least go and I can get rid of that suffix and find the base. So what is that base? Guard. Oh, so I bet this word is somebody who guards. That would make sense, wouldn't it? All right, so by taking out those suffixes, we know what the suffixes mean. It's usually somebody who or something to do with the base word. So journalism is something that has to do with journaling, or guardian, somebody who guards. So taking out that base word helps us figure out the meaning of the entire word. All right, let's look at some vocabulary. So this first word is careened. Careened. And if you see this guy right here, he's careening, he's leaning or swaying to one side or in motion. So he's kind of leaning his feet in a little bit so he doesn't crash. So how many syllables do you think that word has? Careened, 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 careened. think it has 2 syllables. So you're trying to figure out how many claps do you make during it. Careened. It's 2 syllables. So your foundational skill today is, oh, those were kind of out of order. Sorry about that, guys. So to sum up your suffixes, you are going to be reading the story, The Table Tennis Tournament. You're going to be focusing on those suffixes we just worked on, "ian," "ist," and "ism." Now, let's finish up that vocabulary that popped up out of nowhere. So what is this word? Ooh, it's stampeded. So stampeded. From the story, a pair of horses stampeded through the streets towards them. So what do you guys think that means? It is a sudden, panicked rush of horses or other animals. So they're moving quickly, coming in fast. Really quick, let's think back. What happened yesterday in the story? Think to yourself, remember what happened, and we're going to get started with today's reading. Hopefully you remembered that Jacob's dog was acting kind of weird, so he's taking him to his uncle's place, and here we are in the produce district. So the produce district was already alive with activity. Jacob saw horses tethered to wooden wagons standing along both sides of the street. Men in overalls were unloading crates and sacks. Jacob breathed in the early smells of soil and horse flesh. He passed a wagon heaped high with bulging bags of potatoes and onions. A merchant rushed towards him carrying a stack of egg cartons, and Jacob stepped aside to let the man pass. As Jacob hurried towards the spot where Uncle Avi always set up his cart, he started to feel dizzy. His stomach churned, and he thought he was going to be sick. Jacob wondered if Papa was right and the dog had been trembling because of a disease. The ground started to sway. Bending his knees, Jacob tried to ride the movement. The street heaved and rolled like the ocean during a storm. It was as though a giant sleeping below the cobblestone had suddenly decided to get up. So how does the author describe the danger of the earthquake is what we're looking for on this page. Buildings began weaving in and out, and the street pitched like an angry sea. Jacob took a step forward and fell. He heard a wagon overturn and crates thud to the ground. Raising himself on all fours, he tried to make sense of what was happening. This is an earthquake, he realized. It'll be over in a few seconds. Jacob remembered several earthquakes and how the ground had seemed to roll. Sometimes dishes had fallen off shelves, but in an instant, the quakes had been over. The street continued to heave and roll. Jacob's ears filled with a roar as loud as thunder. In the gray light, he saw the cobblestone street split down the middle. A ditch several feet across opened. As Jacob watched, the ditch yawned wide, thinned to a slit, and gaped apart again. Bricks were raining all over the street, and the roar was deafening. I've got to get under something, Jacob thought. Holding his arms over his head, he rushed towards an open building. He stumbled, then forced himself upright. Something rammed into his leg, and Jacob saw the dog. He could see its mouth moving up and down, but he could not hear it barking. Jacob tried to make his way towards the building again, but the dog tripped him. Frantic, Jacob changed direction and ran toward the other side of the street. A great cracking sound came from behind him. He whirled in time to see the front wall of the building collapse in a heap. The air filled with clouds of dust. So how does the author describe the danger of the earthquake? Go ahead and pause your video here. Look back in the text and look, how is this earthquake dangerous? So hopefully you've looked back a little bit. Well, when buildings are moving, I feel like that shows me something is dangerous because buildings are supposed to be built to stand, right? So with the buildings weaving in and out, that shows me it's dangerous and that they could fall. So that's scary. And then it says the street pitched like an angry sea. So the streets are moving like the ocean and the sea. So that makes me think that things are dangerous there too. Hear things falling. And then right over here, bricks were falling on the street. down at the bottom, that cracking sound from behind him, the building collapsed. All of these things are showing us how dangerous it is because Jacob could get hurt. Let's keep reading. All along the street, buildings rattled and lurched. Chunks of masonry hit the ground and broke into pieces. Window glass shattered. The columns on a nearby building buckled and crashed. Carts overturned, littering the side of the street, and frantic horses struggled to free themselves from their reins. So those poor horses are also showing us how it's dangerous because they're tied and they're frantically trying to get free. The dog jumped on Jacob's thigh, pushing him backwards against a collapsed wagon. A pair of horses stampeded through the street towards them. They dragged a broken cart, which lurched from side to side and slammed into piles of fallen brick. Jacob could feel his heart pounding inside his chest as he squeezed himself against the side of the heavy wagon, hoping it would give him some protection. He reached for the dog and held its trembling body close to his chest. The crazed horses careened by, missing them by just a few feet. The roaring drowned all other sounds. Crouching beside the wagon, holding tight to the dog, Jacob watched the cobblestones vibrate and buildings cave in. The ground shook with such violence that Jacob thought the world was coming to an end. Okay, so this story, it ends today with this picture. So my question for you is, what part of the story is illustrated here? Do you think this is a good depiction or a good drawing of the scene? So pause it here, tell and figure out what is happening in this picture. All right, hopefully you figured out what scene is going on that picture. So, what do you guys think? Do you think the dog helped or got in the way during the earthquake? So I'm not going to give you what I think here because this would be a great discussion to have with your class or with your teacher. So I want you to think, after reading these pages, do you think the dog helped Jacob or just got in his way today? Go back in the text, find those details, especially write just in those pages today. How did that dog help him or get in his way? Now, what we're really focusing on today is that figurative language. So in this paragraph, let's look back and find that simile. Do you guys remember those two key words we're looking for in a simile? Like or as. So use those spirit fingers when I'm going to read this again and show me if you can hear like or as, comparing two things. As Jacob hurried toward the spot where his uncle Avi set up his cart, he started to feel dizzy. His stomach churned and he thought he was going to be sick. Jacob wondered if Papa was right and the dog has been trembling because of a disease. The ground started to sway. Bending his knees, Jacob tried to ride the movement. The street heaved and rolled like the ocean during a storm. It was as though a giant sleeping below the cobblestones had suddenly decided to get up. Okay, so there's actually two that I just realized. The first one that popped out to me, it was, the street heaved and rolled like the ocean during a storm. They're comparing the street to the ocean, but then he's also comparing it down here, like or as a giant sleeping below the cobblestone had suddenly decided to get up. He's comparing what's happening now to a giant. There's actually kind of two things going on there. Good job if you figured that out. Now let's look for a metaphor. So this is comparing two things not using like or as. See if you can figure it out. Bricks were raining all over the street, and the roar was deafening. I've got to get under something, Jacob thought. Holding his arms over his head, he rushed towards an open building. He stumbled, then forced himself upright. Something rammed against his leg, and Jacob saw the dog. He could see its mouth moving up and down, but he could not hear it barking. Jacob tried to make his way toward the building again, but the dog tripped him. Frantic, Jacob changed direction and ran towards the other side of the street. A great cracking sound came from behind him. He whirled in time to see the front wall of the building collapse in a heap. The air filled with clouds of dust. Did you guys find that metaphor? It compared the bricks to rain, like they were falling down like rain. It was kind of a tricky one. Okay, so now it is just a quick reminder of a simile. It's comparing two things using like or as. So this building, oh, I don't want to give anything away here actually, because it's giving some examples. So let's go ahead and just look at your reading response for today. Find the two similes, and why do you think the author uses similes to describe what is happening during this earthquake? So read this paragraph again, find those two similes, and tell me, how do they help you as a reader figure out what's going on? Have a great day, fourth graders, and I'll see you next time. Bye.